OffGuardian News.
I found this, Collin, we've been talking recently about like just the new police state that's been going around. Well, it's not new, just a little more out in the open. But I've asked the question because I don't completely understand why Trump would do this. Like, yes, it supposedly is to pander to his base, but I don't think his base is completely down with that. Like, I think this also hurts him in that regard. So I'm still curious, but this is from OffGuardian, and they might have some explanations, right? So John and Nisha Whitehead write a police state presidency when rule of law becomes rule by gunpoint. So here they talk about how Donald Trump has always been a master of imagery, and we've talked about that recently, about his like AI propaganda wing, right? From his red MAGA hats to his choreographed rallies, he understands the language of spectacle. Now he's discovered the perfect propaganda machine, AI-generated images. AI allows the creation of endless variations of Trump as warrior, Trump as enforcer, Trump as savior. These images spread across social media, replicated, remixed, and shared until they become familiar, even normalized. These memes are carefully crafted signals of how Trump envisions power in America. So, of course, we got the dreaded white screen again. So let me go and fix that by going to the right thing. Here. Slideshow. Cool. These memes are carefully crafted signals of how Trump envisions power in America. These algorithmically perfected images, generated to flood the digital landscape and shape the subconscious of millions, are neither accidental nor new. They are psychological warfare, propaganda that is as old as time. Propaganda does not persuade through logic, it persuades through familiarity. And Trump's AI propaganda machine is doing its job, normalizing the sight of a president in a SWAT uniform. Throughout history, despots have used martial imagery to elevate themselves above the people and justify power by force. You're probably wondering, Collin, what they mean by a president in SWAT uniform. You might not have seen this, but this got shared over on Truth Social. The orange man bad is sharing this. Him in a SWAT uniform, fully militarized police unit, right? So that's nice. That's what a president should be doing. So Mussolini wrapped himself in the black shirts of his paramilitaries to rally fascist Italy. Hitler carefully staged uniforms and parades signaled to total control of the German nation. Stalin and Mao surrounded themselves with martial iconography to convey power over life, death, and law. The message was always the same. I am not just your leader. I am your protector, your executioner, and your law. Today, Trump joins that lineage, not on a battlefield, but in digital space. But unlike his predecessors, Trump does not need mass rallies or parades to craft this imagery, although he fucking uses those too, don't he? I don't know if y'all remember those military parades recently. Algorithms now do the work of propaganda ministries, and unlike past dictators who required massive propaganda apparatuses, Trump needs only an internet connection and an AI tool to clothe himself in the trappings of authoritarianism. This may be political theater, but it is also authoritarian propaganda that sends a message that Trump sees himself not as the servant of the people bound by the Constitution, but as the nation's chief cop, judge, and executioner. Under a police state presidency, there are no checks and balances, no due process, no Bill of Rights that should stand in his way. By collapsing the distinction between civil government and militarized force, the president, self-styled as a SWAT chief, suggests that dissent will not be debated, it will be policed. When Trump dons a SWAT uniform, even digitally, he is telling Americans, this is how I see power. Not as persuasion, not as consent of the governed, but as force delivered at gunpoint. The SWAT image is the visual embodiment of a police state presidency. It signals raids on the homeless, as Trump's July 2025 executive order mandated when it directed federal agencies to clear encampments nationwide. It signals mass arrests of immigrants and families rounded up in early morning ice sweeps. It signals military deployments to American cities when Trump sent the National Guard to Los Angeles, a move a federal court recently ruled a violation of the Post-Comitatus Act, I think. It signals treating dissent as criminality and opposition as insurgency. For decades, Americans have watched the rise of SWAT teams transform America and domestic policing into a militarized state. Battering rams, breaking down doors, no-knock raids in the dead of night, armored vehicles patrolling suburban streets, flashbang grenades tossed into homes. SWAT was originally conceived for rare, high-risk emergencies like hostage situations. Today, it has become the default face of the American police state. The numbers tell the story. In the 1980s, there was roughly 3,000 SWAT raids per year in the U.S. By the 2000s, that number had skyrocketed to 80,000 annually, and don't we feel all safer? What was once a rare tactic reserved for hostage situations or heavily armed standoffs is now routine police work. The result has been predictably tragic: children injured by flashbangs, elderly homeowners killed when they mistook armed agents for intruders, family dogs shot in the chaos of mistaken raids. SWAT culture has normalized the use of military tactics against civilians. It has conditioned Americans to accept armored vehicles on Main Street, black-clad officers in ski masks battering down doors, and neighborhoods transformed into war zones. The court has long warned against this drift into militarized policing, yet what good are limits when the president himself imagines donning the uniform of those who kick doors down? A constitution that is ignored in practice, even if acknowledged on paper, is no safeguard at all, and I'd argue they do neither. Trump's AI propaganda takes this dangerous normalization a step further. It places the president himself at the head of the raid, the enforcer-in-chief, rendering him the law, the enforcer, and the judge. This is the very definition of dictatorship. The Constitution was written precisely to prevent such concentration of power. It was written to prevent the rise of a lawless ruler who would make himself enforcer as well as lawgiver. This is why the Bill of Rights exists, to put clear, inviolable limits on government power. The Fourth Amendment protects against unreasonable searches and seizures. The First protects dissenters and protesters. The Fifth guarantees due process before life, liberty, or property can be taken. And the Second is to keep a well-regulated militia to stop fucking tyranny. But no one's doing that right now, are they? In the American police state that is rapidly unfolding, citizens are not sovereign individuals but potential suspects. Dissent is not free expression but insurgency, and the citizenry are not seen as equal participants in a social contract, but as a populace to be subdued, which we've talked about ad nauseum recently when it comes to the urban warfare they plan on committing. So yeah, this is not merely unconstitutional, it is anti-constitutional. What makes Trump's propaganda even more dangerous is how well it aligns with America's existing drift towards militarization. Yeah. So, police departments nationwide already deploy surplus military equipment, including tanks, drones, and battlefield weapons. Federal agents like Homeland Security and ICE conduct raids that look indistinguishable from military operations. Surveillance technology powered by Palantir and other private firms track the movements of ordinary citizens. Protests are met with riot gear, tear gas, and mass arrests. The carceral prison state is rapidly expanding. Congressional funding for Trump's $170 billion prison expansion threatens to make incarceration the government's default solution to social problems. Military forces are being used for domestic policing. The federalization of the National Guard to suppress immigration protests in Los Angeles, already struck down as unlawful, is a warning of how military power is being recast as domestic policing. Sounds like political violence to me, but what do I know? It must be said, Trump did not create this police state reality, but his presidency gleefully amplifies it. recasting America as a nation where law and order means rule at gunpoint. The shift matters because it changes how people imagine power. A president who wears a SWAT uniform, even in AI fantasy, is telling the public, I am not one of you, I am over you. The most insidious part of this propaganda is not its shock value, but its normalizing function, part of a deliberate strategy to acclimate Americans to authoritarian rule. Images, once seen as dystopian. Yep.
Can we pause there?
Mm-hmm.
My connection might be.
You're good, I think.
Okay.
I still hear you.
I think so. Okay.
So,
do you think this will work?
What?
This strategy to acclimate Americans to authoritarian rule.
I think it's been happening.
I don't. Right, but I think it's the idea of people becoming passive. I feel that's what I think it kind of alludes to here. And I don't want to mention this, but again, given what happened at the time of this recording a few hours ago, it is funny because people are kind of talking around the issue and not necessarily about a possible root cause as to why this is happening. And I think this is kind of, I don't want to say the beginning because, I'm such a cynic in terms of revolution happening in this side of the world that I don't think it's going to happen barring like a nuclear bomb blowing off, But what I do think is happening is people are becoming slowly more, I argue, maybe radicalized and are slightly more willing to take power in their own hands. And I think we've been seeing this, I think definitely since within the last 2 years. But I think especially now, and just more, everything just seems more chaotic than, wouldn't say normal because this is America, but it's the idea of like people are fucking angry. Like people cannot pay their bills. People cannot afford healthcare. People cannot fill up their car for gas. Like, and people are rising up against that. And instead of addressing those issues, the government's like, nah, we're just going to get the cops on you. You're going to like it, peasant. And
that's because violence is the language they only speak in. That is the language. Right. We're not allowed to use it, which is why that's what they mean. Like to acclimate Americans to the rule. That's what they're talking about. If you're willing to like let that continue without giving violence back at some point, that's what they're talking about. You are acclimated. You are Stockholm syndromed to the problem.
Which I think in some ways I now think it is working because I do think in some regards that people are just too tired to
decades
just so into themselves and like so into their situations, for good or for worse, that they don't have time to think beyond their circumstances, their personal circumstances in the moment. But there's a few people who are thinking beyond, that are willing to do something about it, probably at the cost of their life, but hell, they're going to be like, oh, well, I'm going to do this anyway. And given that it's Trump, unfortunately, I think we're going to see more situations rising up like this, especially given, as I keep like saying, like I live in DC, there's been a lot more of an ICE presence within my neighborhood, like over the last few weeks. But one thing that has kind of, I wouldn't say necessarily positive, but it's definitely activated people. Like people are now protesting, like within certain pockets of my neighborhoods. People are watching for ICE raids so that whenever ICE kind of comes in, like there's going to be enough people that will scream, record, and like chase them out. So while I argue in some ways that's a great thing, that should be happening anyway. That shouldn't be happening because of Trump. but as I've kept saying, like, Biden funded the police more during his term, which has given Trump the carte blanche to be like, has enough gun power, literally, to shoot down any dissent, given how propped up the police state is. And as I keep saying, we've been talking, you more especially, been talking about this for the last few months, of how AI and the police state surveillance and cop cities now, basically in every major city, whether they're being built or be planning to be built, are coming into effect. And again, given the Charlie Kirk situation, and I said this to you offline, I feel this is going to ramp up a lot of those discussions. Because God forbid they have a proletariat that actually is willing to do something. Even
any crisis, whether manufactured or not, will be used to further the authoritarian rule, as it has been for years.
I was talking to a person offline just an hour ago, and he was like, "Oh, Charlie Kirk is not big of an issue. He's not a big deal." I'm like, and you could be far from the truth. If BB was able to acknowledge him, thoughts and prayers. Like, political influencers have a lot more influence than probably Trump does.
A bit of both. He's one of them. That's the problem.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Well, yeah.
Not to get you too involved in that argument, which, sure, we're trying not to.
All that to say is, again, the idea of having to protect ourselves and having to have the means of, at minimum, if police surveillance elevates, we can't just be passive and just say uncle. Like, we have to elevate with them, So what is that going to look like? Those are discussions that we need to have, which are not, unfortunately, in independent media, we're not necessarily having. I think in anything, it's kind of more falling in line or kind of saying verbatim the language that the liberals use, like, in terms of situations like this, when I don't think that really should be the fight that we should. That's not even a fight at all. That's just kind of like, you're just waving the right flag before you even get in the fight. So what does it look like to fight on our end that is, I can't think of the word right now, but in a way that kind of responds appropriately to the rise of the police state that is inevitable.
Yep. I'm with you. So images once now seen as dystopian now appears campaign meme. The president as militarized enforcer becomes a shareable joke, a collectible, a digital poster for the faithful. But every meme conditions the public to accept what would have been unthinkable. Today it is a picture, tomorrow it's policy. This is how authoritarianism advances, not always through tanks in the streets, but through the slow, steady normalization of force as governance. Every authoritarian regime has used uniforms and slogans to rebrand tyranny as order. The Nazis had their SS uniforms, the Soviets their Red Star, the Chinese communists their Mao suits, which looked pretty good. Good tailors, those Mao guys. Symbols matter because they carry meaning deeper than words. Yes, that is what the definition of symbols. Trump's SWAT imagery is America's warning sign. It is the uniform of repression masquerading as protection. It is the costume of a ruler who governs by intimidation, not law. We ignore this at our peril. If we fail to see the danger, if we laugh it off as mere fantasy, we will wake up one day to find the fantasy has become reality. The Constitution does not permit presidents to be SWAT chiefs. It does not allow them to enforce laws by decree, or to jail dissenters at will, or to treat citizens as insurgents. It insists that the president is a public servant, bound by law, and accountable to the people, but that system only survives if we, the people, demand it. Nothing can stop what's coming, declares Trump. On the contrary, tyranny can always be stopped. Liberty lies in the hearts of the people. The choice before us is clear. Do we accept the imagery of the president a SWAT chief, or do we affirm the vision of the founders that no man is above the law? The time to decide is now. The Constitution will not defend itself. Trump's AI propaganda declares that laws, whatever the president enforces, it declares that rights are privileges granted or withdrawn by armored men. It declares that nothing, not law, not courts, not people, can stop what is coming. But, as I make it clear in my book, Battlefield America, The War on the American People, and its fictional counterpart, The Eric Blair Diaries, this is not the American way. In a constitutional republic, nothing, not presidents, not uniforms, not threats at gunpoint, not tyranny, should ever be unstoppable. Americans must decide, will we be governed by the Constitution, or will we be policed by the images of a SWAT-clad ruler who tells us resistance is futile? The founders knew the answer, so should we. What did those founders do against that tyranny again? I forget what happened. I think muskets were involved, if I remember. But
yeah.
Meanwhile, at dinners with the president, shit like this happens. So, guess who, Care Bear? Guess who did that protest? You know?
I have no idea.
Wild guess. Who's allowed in these rooms more often than not?
Oh, really?
Uh-huh. Yep.
Code Pink.
Always Code Pink. Isn't that funny?
Wow.
Always them. And, you know, I don't know if that's going to do it, fam, but, like, good for you. So, but anyway, thoughts?
I mean, I said it earlier, so
Yep.
I just think, you know, like, we have to evolve in a way that our government has evolved. And, like, to the point where our government, essentially, it's just like, we don't have to do anything. We'll just get the police to do the dirty work for us.
Mm-hmm.
And their type of violence, and it's funny because we're seeing online, like, there's no such thing, like, political violence has no space in the country right now. It's kind of like, really? Where have you been for
where it started.
the past 250 years? Like, you don't like it when we do it, but you do it all the time here and abroad. So,
yeah,
you know, also I heard another person say to me today, you know, like, words aren't political violence. I would argue no healthcare. No healthcare is political
unless
violence.
they're words calling for the violence of others, then they are somehow. Okay.
Right. But
whatever.
The idea that people can eat isn't political violence. The idea that you have to go into debt to get the healthcare that you need, that's political violence. Like, those things are okay. But to be damned if people get so fed up that they will take it out on government leaders and their minions. So, but yeah, it's just so funny.
It really is. Well, talking about these sorts of things is why YouTube's decides to come after our, monetary ability. So if you want to get around that system, you can go to ko-fi.com/IndieNewsNetwork or scan that QR code you see on your screen now. If you're one of the poors like ourselves and don't have money to throw around, just share the video. Just literally do that. Take this video, send it to one of your like-minded friends. That easy. Leave a comment even. Supposedly that helps the algorithm if YouTube completely, if they leave us any options for growth. Like and subscribe. Supposedly that also helps, but we're not sure. Otherwise, thanks for watching.